Look, I'm not saying society is collapsing, but have you been outside? Prep Starts Now has emergency supplies for people who want to be prepared without turning into those guys with underground bunkers. But if you happen to be a guy with an underground bunker, give me a call. Prep Starts Now has 72-hour emergency kits, first aid supplies, car breakdown gear, water filtration, basically everything you need when the power goes out and you realize you can't charge your phone to Google, "What do I do?" They also have a prep academy that teaches you what to actually do in emergencies, which is honestly more useful than owning a bunch of gear that you don't know how to use. I've got you 15% off with code 10MM at prepstartsnow.com. That is the highest discount available, and it's very important to use the code so that you get that discount. prepstartsnow.com, code 10MM, because the best time to prepare was yesterday, and the second best time is right before you need it. Easter Sunday, 1990. A couple playing license plate games on a back road in Michigan, an aggressive driver in a beat-up van, and a bloody sheet at an abandoned schoolhouse. What Ray and Marie Thornton saw that day would help solve a murder, launch a nationwide manhunt, and eventually inspire one of the 2000's biggest horror films. But the woman at the center of this story deserves to be remembered for more than just an inspiration for a monster movie. Ray and Marie Thornton had a Sunday ritual. Every week, they'd take a drive through a quiet back road of southern Michigan, close to the Indiana border. It was their way of decompressing, getting away from work stress and the chaos of raising kids. They'd play little road trip games to pass the time, like trying to make words out of license plates. Totally wholesome, totally normal, especially in a time before we all had the internet. April 15th, 1990 started out like any other Sunday. They were cruising down Snow Prairie Road, about 12 miles outside of Coldwater, Michigan. Not much traffic, just them and the open road. Then suddenly, this van comes roaring up behind them. Some sources say it was brown, others say green, but what everyone agrees on is that the driver was aggressive as hell. The van got right up on their bumper, then swerved into the oncoming lane and flew right past them. Marie caught the letters GZ on the license plate as it went by and made a joke. "Geez, he's in a hurry." They laughed it off. Some jerk in a rush, right? We've all seen that driver. Sometimes we've been that driver. But then a few miles down the road, they passed an old abandoned schoolhouse, and there was that same van parked right there. The driver was outside, and what Ray and Marie saw made their blood run cold. The guy was carrying something wrapped in a white sheet, and the sheet was stained with what looked like blood. Now they're freaked out. It gets worse, though. 2 or 3 miles past the schoolhouse, guess who shows up in their rearview mirror again? Van guy, and this time he doesn't pass. He stays right there on their tail, dangerously close for miles. This was intimidation. This was a man making sure they knew he'd seen them seeing him. The Thorntons did what any of us would do. They got the hell out of there and decided to report the license plate to the police. As they crossed into Indiana, they saw the van one last time, pulled over on the side of the road. The driver was crouched behind it, actively changing the license plate. And when they drove past, Marie could see directly into the open passenger door. There was blood inside. What Ray and Marie didn't know yet was that they'd just witnessed a man trying to cover up the murder of his ex-wife. 5 hours before the Thorntons saw that van, something terrible happened at a house in Coldwater, Michigan. Dennis and Marilynn DePue had been married for 17 years. They had 3 teenage kids. He was a property assessor for the state. She was a guidance counselor at Coldwater High School, the kind of person that students trusted and respected. Inside that marriage, things were dark. Dennis was controlling and paranoid. He isolated himself from the family and constantly accused Marilynn of turning their kids against him. He blamed her for everything. In his mind, nothing was ever his fault. When Marilynn finally filed for divorce in 1989, it was her way of saying enough is enough. She was done being controlled. For Dennis, losing that control was unforgivable. On Easter morning, Dennis showed up at Marilyn's house for a court-ordered visit with the kids. When the kids didn't want to go with him, he and Marilyn got into a heated argument. Right in front of their children, Dennis attacked her, shoved her down a flight of basement stairs. She was badly hurt, possibly unconscious. Then Dennis told his kids that he was taking their mom to the hospital. He carried her to his van and then drove away. That was the last time those kids ever saw their mother alive. 4 hours later, one of the DePue's daughters called the police. She was worried sick. Her dad said he was taking her mom to the hospital, but nobody had heard anything since then. Police checked. Marilyn had never been admitted anywhere. The next day, a highway worker found Marilyn's body on a deserted road between her house and that abandoned schoolhouse where the Thorntons had seen Dennis. She'd been shot once in the back of the head. Dennis, obviously, was immediately the prime suspect. The Thorntons' eyewitness testimony was crucial. Forensic evidence, including tire tracks at the schoolhouse, matched his van. But Dennis was gone. He'd become a fugitive. For almost a year, he managed to stay hidden. During that time, he sent 17 letters to friends and family from all over the country. Virginia, Iowa, Oklahoma. Dennis used them to justify what he'd done, ranting about Marilyn's supposed lies and tricks, painting himself as the real victim. Classic narcissist. He'd lost his wife and kids, his home. He couldn't stop trying to control the narrative, even on the run. Then, in March 1991, producers at Unsolved Mysteries got interested in the case. If you're too young to remember Unsolved Mysteries, it was basically the true crime podcast of its time, except it wasn't a podcast at all because those didn't exist. It was on NBC. It was hosted by Robert Stack, wearing a trench coat. It was a whole thing, and it was fantastic. The show would do dramatic reenactments of unsolved cases and fugitive hunts, and then ask viewers to call in tips. It was wildly effective. On March 20th, 1991, the Dennis DePue segment aired. They did a full reenactment of what the Thorntons witnessed on Snow Prairie Road. They showed his photo. They asked America to help find him. And by the way, you really do need to see a photo of this guy. Go to 10minutemurder.com, click on the murder blog, and before you look, imagine what you think this guy looks like, and he looks exactly like that. It's extremely creepy and unsettling. The night that episode of Unsolved Mystery aired, a woman in Dallas was watching TV. As the DePue segment played, she realized something horrifying. The fugitive on her screen was her boyfriend. She knew the man as Hank Queen. Dennis saw the episode too. He knew it was over. He made up some story about his mom being sick, asked his girlfriend to make him sandwiches for the road to keep her busy in the kitchen, grabbed his stuff, and bolted, without the sandwiches. The show had already done its job. Tips were flooding in. Police in Louisiana spotted his van, and a high-speed chase began. It tore across state lines into Mississippi, where local cops were ready and waiting. Warren County Sheriff Paul Barrett was one of the officers involved. He later told the Associated Press something that perfectly captures how surreal this was. Quote, "My wife and I watched the TV program about him, and the next morning, I am with other officers firing into his van. I'd say that's not going to happen every day." Less than 12 hours after that Unsolved Mysteries episode began, it was over. Dennis DePue's van was stopped in Vicksburg, Mississippi around 4 a.m. on March 21st, 1991. There had been a shootout. When deputies approached the vehicle, they found Dennis slumped behind the wheel, a gun still in his hand. He'd shot himself. The bullet entered through his mouth and exited the back of his head. 10 years later, something weird happened. The 2001 horror movie Jeepers Creepers came out and became a massive hit. The opening scene shows a brother and sister driving down a desolate road, playing a license plate game. A creepy old truck tailgates them aggressively, then speeds past. Later, they see the same truck parked by an abandoned church. The driver is dumping what looks like bodies wrapped in bloody sheets. Then the truck chases them. Sound familiar? Director Victor Salva has never officially confirmed that the Dennis DePue case inspired the film's opening. He only said it was based on a true story that I was told about an elderly couple. The parallels are too specific to be coincidence. The license plate game, the aggressive tailgating, the abandoned building, the bloody sheets, the second chase, it's all there. When you learn about the connection between Jeepers Creepers and the Dennis DePue case, it changes how you see that opening scene. Those aren't just fictional characters being chased down a scary road. That sequence is based on what Marie and Ray Thornton actually experienced, what they actually saw. Marilynn DePue was 43 years old when she died. She spent years working as a guidance counselor at Coldwater High School, the kind of person who actually gave a damn about kids and wanted to help them figure out their futures. She had 3 teenagers of her own who needed her. She'd finally gotten the courage to leave an abusive marriage and was building a new life. The week before Easter 1990, Marilynn was probably thinking about normal stuff. Maybe she was planning what to make for dinner. Maybe she was helping one of her kids with homework or college applications. Maybe she was looking forward to having a quiet holiday weekend. She had no idea that the man she'd been married to for 17 years was capable of what came next. Dennis DePue killed her because he couldn't accept that she'd moved on. That's what it came down to. Control. When he lost it, he took everything from her. Her future, her chance to see her kids graduate, her chance to help more students. All of it gone because one man decided his feelings mattered more than her life. Ray and Marie were just 2 people on a Sunday drive who happened to be in the wrong place at the right time. Their testimony helped law enforcement piece together what happened. That Unsolved Mysteries episode brought Dennis's timeline as a fugitive to an end within hours. And yeah, a decade later, their experience became part of a movie that a lot of people love. Stories travel in weird ways. Sometimes they move through true crime TV shows. Sometimes they end up in horror movies. Sometimes they get told in podcasts like this one. What matters is that we remember Marilynn DePue was a real person. She mattered to her kids. She mattered to her students. She mattered, period. And she deserved to live a long, peaceful life far away from the man who killed her. Thanks for listening to 10-Minute Murder, bingeable true crime stories. I'm Joe, I'm the host, and if you are a new listener, hit subscribe right now. Wait, but only if you enjoy the podcast. If you think it kind of sucks, then don't subscribe. And I get it, this show isn't for everyone. It's not meant to be for everyone, but if you do enjoy the podcast, please do subscribe. It helps you and it helps me, so it's a mutually beneficial relationship we've got going on. Also, you can go to 10minutemurder.com. Lots of stuff to do there. Check out the murder blog that I mentioned earlier in the episode where you can see a picture of Dennis DePue that you really do need to see. Imagine kind of a creepier Herman Munster, and that's him. Also on the website, you can subscribe to the newsletter that's there. I've just started sending out newsletters now. I know that I've been collecting these email addresses for a while and you haven't been getting anything. That's because I haven't sent anything out until recently. But I do need to let you know that if you have subscribed and you haven't seen a newsletter email from me, it's probably in your spam. I put myself on the list, the newsletter list, and I didn't see it. I was like, where the heck is this thing? It was in my spam. So if you haven't seen it, go check your spam folder. It's probably living in there. On the website, you can also email me, which is where this one comes from, subject accidental detective tendencies. Hey Joe, your podcast has officially ruined me. I now analyze every weird thing I see like I'm auditioning to be a detective. Strange car parked long on my street, case file. Neighbor's trash can at a weird angle. Suspicious. Have you noticed that true crime fans pick up those little, I could solve the case if I needed to, habits? Or is it just me losing my grip on reality? Devin in Louisville. And Devin, let me tell you, you're probably just losing your grip on reality. No, JK, I think that in order to be someone that a connoisseur of true crime, you have to have that part of your brain that works that way. You trust people, but not totally. You're always wondering what people's ulterior motives are. You see a piece of paper on the ground and it has like this reddish smudge on it. You think, oh, that's blood. That's potential evidence right there. I do that, and I'm sure 90% of the people listening to this right now do that same thing. I think it's within our brains. We consume all this true crime and we just assume it's out there in the world, which, by the way, it is. That's not a conspiracy theory. There are murderers all around us. Not to try to scare you or anything, but you listen to the podcast, you hear these people, they're normal people, especially like the BTK killer. Devin, again, thank you for your email. And that's going to do it. That is your episode for today. Thank you again for listening to 10-Minute Murder. See you next time. So I'm wearing this polo shirt made from jade stone and crab shells, which sounds like something a wizard would wear in a fantasy novel, but it actually works. Hypernatural makes these shirts that literally cool you down 3 to 5 degrees when you're running hot. I don't know how. Something about jade fibers and science. Men's Journal calls them the best polo shirts of the year, probably because they don't make you smell like a gym bag after you wear one. They're also 95% biodegradable, so when you die, you can be buried with it and decompose together. Romantic. I got you 20% off with the code 10MM at hypernaturalstyle.com. That's hypernaturalstyle.com, and it's very important to use the code so that you get the discount. 10MM.